Chris, you're a procrastination coach. Tell us, what exactly is procrastination?
Oh, procrastination is just where you are putting something off in your life. It could be a task, could be an event, could even be talking to someone. It's just that act of delaying something for one reason or another.
Do you think it could be beneficial in one degree or another? And is there a difference between laziness and procrastination?
Oh, there is a big difference between laziness and procrastination. There's a fine line between the two, but laziness is just the lack of motivation, which is tied to the procrastination. But procrastination at its core is generally related to some sort of mindset, some sort of fear. Something is preventing you from getting that thing done. It's not necessarily always about time management spectrum, right? So you've got your energy, you've got your focus, you've got your mindset, along with the ability to manage your time. Now, one of the things too is you asked if it could be beneficial. And there is one specific kind of procrastinator that they believe it's beneficial. And it can be in the short term, but it's never beneficial in the long term. And that's what you call the crisis maker. And the crisis maker thrives on working under pressure. They feel that they have their best work. They feel more creative when they're on tight deadlines. The issue with that is that their work quality is generally inconsistent. And eventually you take on one too many tasks and it blows up in your face.
And you're going to end up totally burned out of energy. But I believe the issue is that people procrastinate because they have underlying fears of the results of the action. If you would have two people in the room, one is totally addicted to sweets, the other one is a regular person, and you put in front of them a cookie, what's going to happen is you can leave them for 10 minutes and you're going to come back. The person that is not addicted is perfectly fine. But the person that is addicted and wants to quit, that person looks like he just ran a marathon. He's exhausted from fighting himself. He's fighting his thoughts and emotions. So then what happens is you ask those two people to do some work, to work on their businesses or go to 9 to 5 or have a productive day. And the person that is addicted to sweets is like completely out of steam. He's done for the day. And in truth, he has done nothing. It's like he has something deep within that he is not able to pinpoint, but that thing is making him to procrastinate and to move away from the goals. And laziness for me is, have you like seen tigers or lions in
Sure.
nature? They're very lazy animals. Let's be real. But the way they hunt, they got the game, and once they eat, since they carnivore, they need tons of time to digest. And nature teaches us tons of lessons, but we need to have eyes open. But I'm curious. I'm curious how your journey started.
Journey really started when, see, I'm a coach. I've just never really had the title. So I've always had a passion for helping others and just this natural tendency to assist people in getting things done and keeping calm under pressure and all that fun stuff. I did recognize in myself that I fall into the category of dreamer. I didn't really even know that I had an issue with procrastination until I realized that I was putting these things off and just didn't know really why I was putting them off, why I couldn't get some things done or certain other things done. So I did a lot of research into it and I realized that I'm a dreamer. And then I went on this journey to really get the skills and dive deep into the psychology and see how I could better not only help myself, help others.
That's respectable. Something within yourself so you can help others. So your mess became your message. That's perfect. And what I also observed that many people start the coaching game so they can actually help themselves as well. You mentioned something about goal setting. How does it look when you're a dreamer? And before we answer this, just let me know what it means to be a dreamer.
To be a dreamer means that you're very passionate in life. You have a lot of aspirations. You have a lot of ideas. You're very creative. But what happens is that you tend to get lost in the process of thinking about it and not actually doing it. There's different reasons for this. And sometimes it's you get overwhelmed by thinking about the details, or maybe you just don't know how to do it, or you have this fear that you start it once it becomes real. And then once it becomes real, it becomes a problem. And so that's the way it starts out to be a dreamer anyway.
It's our never-ending globe. So how a dreamer can achieve things. And do you know any other archetypes like this?
Oh, yes. So a dreamer can achieve things by time blocking, getting an accountability partner, and having a routine and a structure, getting used to making things reality. So a lot of times the dreamer has an issue with the structure of things, right? The brain is a muscle, the mind is a muscle, and you can train yourself using structured routines to take your thoughts and manifest them in the real world. It can be something as simple as making a cup of coffee, just thinking, okay, I'm making a cup of coffee. That's my goal. It sounds silly, right? But you're making habits when you do that. So you say, okay, so how do I make a cup of coffee? I get the water, I boil it, I put it in the coffee, I add some sugar, I stir it, I'm done. And by doing that every day, you can start to move on to bigger and bigger things. When you think about your dream, normally it's a very big thing. It starts out with something that's not very focused. I want to start a business. Okay. So what does that look like? Because if you have this big, massive goal, you don't know what to break it up into the smallest parts possible as well. It can just be something as simple, and no step is too small. Don't feel silly for making steps that are super small, because as you start completing those steps, you'll notice that your momentum can actually stay. One step literally might be, does it cope with a business name or something? And that could be broken down into even smaller steps. Figure out what I like, figure out what I don't like. And then could even break it down into even further smaller steps, in that at the end of the day, what do I want to do? And once you have those small steps, you can take those small steps every single day. I had a person that had a dream, and no dream is too big or too small either. I had a person whose dream was to drive a car. They just couldn't do it. And so the big day comes, they get their license, they still can't drive on their own. So their small step was literally wake up, put on your shoes, open the door, go to the car, put the key in the car, turn on the car, put it, and they had these things. And as you're doing it, you're in the moment. So you're not thinking about what's coming next. And sometimes what's coming next is what's actually stopping us from moving forward.
So the dreamer dream big, like taking the rocket to the moon. But since it's so big, it overwhelms them. They have an issue with building habits that get them on the journey step by step.
That's right.
What are some other archetypes that can struggle with procrastination?
So yeah, some of the more common ones I talked about a little bit before, the crisis maker, where they think that procrastination actually helps them, right? They think they thrive under pressure. They like the boost of creativity, the adrenaline sometimes, and they just feel like it really works for them. Then, of course, there's the perfectionist, which a lot of us fall into. We don't want to release anything because it's not 100% perfect. We have expectations that are set way too high, and we wind up never releasing anything or never doing anything because it's never perfect or never the right time. Another really popular one is the which causes analysis paralysis. You can't make decisions because you're always worried about the outcome of what's going to happen, or you're always worried about what's going to happen next. Could be that you want to do a project, but you're worried about failing, or you're worried about succeeding too. That can actually get to a point where you have a successful business, and then it's time for you to expand. And they say, what if everything goes wrong? What if I just lost everything I've built? On the other hand, they can also be sitting there saying, what if everything goes right? Then I've got all these expectations and this pressure to perform, right? So those are the ones: perfectionist, the dreamer, the warrior, the crisis maker, and then there's also the defier. The defier is interesting too. And I think we all have a little bit of that in us, where we might put things off because we don't like being told what to do. We like being autonomous. We like having control. You can feel resistance in yourself when you think about when you say, I have to do something, when it's an external force of something that you have to do. We all have this little twinge inside that's like this resistance, right? It's like, I really don't want to do this. It's not something that I said I want to do. Those are the five main types, tons of combinations too, but those are the five big ones.
I believe I used to be a perfectionist. I had a self-image of me like I'm so perfect, and I cannot afford to make mistakes because then the self-image would be destroyed. So that was my biggest blocking point. But for anyone listening from the audience, do you think that determining what archetype are you is the first step, and then is getting motivated to work on yourself the second step?
Oh, for sure. The first step to anything is knowing yourself. So when you know yourself and when you notice these patterns of behavior, that would be the first step. Then the second step would be figure out what archetype you are or what combination you are. And then the third step would be the willingness to work on it. I actually have an 8-question quiz on my website that you can take. It takes 2 minutes and it can lead you in the general direction of what archetype you are. Again, there are many mixes there, but I found that with those 8 questions, you can pretty much figure out which of the 5 you're most inclined towards.
Can you give us a sample of the questions?
Yeah, sure, I can. It's just on my website, procrastinationstation.ca.
Give us two.
Yep. So one of the questions is, how do you typically approach big projects? By telling us how you approach big projects, you can say you plan everything, you have big ideas, but you don't have the steps. You worry about everything, or you wait until a deadline is too close before you start, or you feel annoyed or angry when somebody tells you to do it. And then another question is, how do hard deadlines affect you? Like, how do you really feel when you have a deadline approaching? And that's just,
Are there any predefined answers in it?
oh yes, there's always 5 choices.
Mm.
And those 5 choices guide you down the path of which archetype you fall into.
I hate deadlines. I don't use them. I'm one of those person that when I have to do something tomorrow, I'm going to do it today, because I just hate the idea of carrying that thought in my head, and it's going to deplete me of energy. In fact, I'm more of a be in the flow guy. So I don't like to plan at all. I like those ideas to come to me. But I know it's not that regular, and for people might be on different stage in life, as we all are. So my question would be how to get motivated to do that when you know what to do, but there's a new show on Netflix, new game has been released on Steam, and many others.
So motivation and inspiration are funny things. Just to go back for a second there, but what you're describing about doing a task as soon as it comes into your view, that's actually procrastination. And it's normal. That's not normally seen as an issue because you get things done. But it's very interesting that a lot of procrastinators can turn into precrastinators or even post-crastinators. But to answer your question,
can we wait and then shine more light on post-procrastinator as well?
Yes, excuse me. So precrastination is like you said. So as soon as you get a task, you want to get it out of sight, out of mind. And there's normally different ways to handle that. It's not normally seen as an issue. The only time it gets into the realm of being an issue is when you get distracted and when you have a lot of tasks that come at you at the same time, because the tendency is to choose those tasks which you can do the easiest or the quickest for that sort of instant gratification fix, right? Procrastination generally isn't an issue if you're an entrepreneur or you have control over what you need to do and when, but it does become an issue when you're in a workplace and say you're managing a bunch of projects and they all have the same deadline. And say it's a website, you have to build a website. So you have to get content written, you have to get a logo design, and you have to actually build the website. And you spend all your time writing the content because it's easier. You spend all your time on the logo, it's easier. And then you've got 3 days left because you've done everything else except actually build the website, right? So you haven't, launched, and then you don't have enough time to finish it because you spent all this time doing all the little tasks first from all the other different projects that came in because they were easier to do and they were quicker to do.
And there is the benefit of having this dopamine rush once you achieve things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The dopamine rush is definitely one of the big factors as well. Now, post-crastination technically doesn't exist as a word, only really in the Urban Dictionary. And it's not a new concept, but it's one that hasn't really been explored a lot. And that is the act of delaying tasks on purpose. So that there's only really a couple of different reasons for that. The first one is that you're a little bit of a perfectionist. So you delay finishing it to make sure completed 100% of the way that you want it done. Or the other one is a little bit of a defier in that I'm going to get it to you when I get it to you sort of idea.
Believe that those people are very hard to work with.
Not necessarily, but it does because procrastination falls a lot under perfectionism and a lot under the defier. It's often not even considered like a valid thought process, but I think it is simply because you're not putting it off per se. You're just deciding when it's going to be done. So it's on the other side of procrastination. That's why they call it post-procrastination. And now to go back to motivation versus inspiration, I've always been of the mind that you always look for the inspiration and the important things rather than the motivation because, and some might argue it's semantics, right? It's only the words. But to me, whenever I've asked about motivation, it's almost always come from a place of borderline negativity, right? So I want to be motivated. You're motivated to make that money. Why are you motivated? And I like money because I can get a house because if I don't have a house, I live on the street and I'm motivated to go to the gym. Oh, okay. What's motivating you to go to the gym? I want to look good so that I don't get fat and so that nobody teases me. So again, it's a place of some sort of negativity, but I've noticed that when I've asked them about their inspiration, it's always coming from a place of joy. And the people who are inspired actually continue through their actions more than the people that say that they're really motivated to do something. And it's true because inspiration comes from a place of joy. Now, how do you find that inspiration to keep going? It's different for everybody, but if you've got some goals and you don't know how to get going, the simplest thing is just move. Because once you've got some sort of momentum, it's harder to stop. But while you're stopped, very easy to stay stopped. Sir Isaac Newton said that object in motion stays in motion until acted upon by external force, and object at rest tends to stay at rest. So the easiest way is to just, again, pick something small and just keep going.
So let's assume that our goal is to go to the moon and we're building a rocket. We have the plan. We are motivated. And by the way, because I have a background in Shaolin Kung Fu, motivation was always a very strange word for me, which I not necessarily understood. I used to operate from the point of discipline and then being obsessed. So for me, like the motivation is very fleeting. It can go and vanish in moments.
Oh yeah.
And like when you push too hard, you lose the motivation, you lose the inspiration, and then you're just grinding for the sake of grinding. So it seems like the balance between those two is very crucial. So we're building this rocket. We have the plan, how to actually achieve that and how to ensure we are in balance, that we have the right inspiration, that we're not just doing for the sake of doing and at the risk of a burnout.
Yep. So that's a good question. So there are many different things that you can do in doing that. And a lot of it depends on each individual work style too. But one of the big things again is to just break it up into the smallest tasks possible and also to delegate the tasks evenly across different areas. Make sure that one team isn't working for 5 hours a day while another team is working for 7 hours a day. A lot of the times what you'll see, especially on big projects, like building a rocket, let's just take that as that example, is that when I go into organizations sometimes and they say, why is my development department not working well? Or why is my janitorial department working really well? And a lot of the time it's about delegation and just sharing the workload effectively too. And depending on the task, it often has been shown that taking frequent breaks is actually more productive than not taking breaks. So the most popular example of this is the Pomodoro technique. And what that is, you work in short spurts. You have to build this rocket. Stressful. Oh, we have to do it before this date because otherwise it's going to be cloudy. You have to launch. It's only a small window. So by breaking the tasks up in the smallest parts possible, by working in say 2-3 hours and then taking a 1-hour break, you'll be more productive and you won't suffer burnout because you're not only splitting the workload, but you're peppering in a little bit of relaxation time and things that you enjoy.
Yeah, I think for dreamer, it's important to understand this is not a sprint, this is a marathon, and you need to have this long-term perspective. Do you have any other tools like the one that you mentioned that could be beneficial to the audience?
Yeah, man, tools. There are tools that are just way. It's all about what works best for you. I have a lot of people ask me that same question that you asked me just now. What tool can I use? And it depends what kind of person you are. If you're a visual person, then a vision board works well. If you're a tactile person, then making a little model of how you expect it to look out of Legos, modeling clay, that might work better to motivate you. If you're auditory, then you'll record it every day. You take out a little on your phone, just record a small recording, listen to it over and over again to get that in there. Of course, you've got your journaling techniques. Write it out every day. How are you going to feel when it's done? How do you feel right now? What do you have to get done to make you feel that way? And then there's all sorts of other tools that are out there. The Eisenhower matrix, the ABC method, the big rocks, little rocks. There's literally thousands of tools. It's just all about finding the right tool that works for you.
But essentially, what does using tools give us?
So a tool is essentially just a way for you to process what's already inside you.
So just to give us awareness and clarity.
Awareness, clarity, sometimes direction.
Can you share more light on something you mentioned before, delegating tasks, how to do it effectively? Because some people, like I used to work in corporate environment, and sometimes I prefer to do it myself because explaining to people was just a drag. And I know I could do it myself much faster and easier.
Yeah. So that's all about control, right? So what happens with delegation is, like you said, a lot of the time is that maybe you don't trust anybody to do it as well as you, or maybe you don't have anybody that you are absolutely certain can do the job as well as you with the same skills. So delegation's always a big thing, especially when with newer companies and people starting out, and CEOs have this issue too sometimes where they want it done now and they know that they can do it now and they're not sure who else can do it. And a lot of that is just relinquishing control and just knowing that the end result is something that is often better when you have a mix than when you just have a single source. I kind of relate it to when people ask me, how is that the case? And I said, when you look in nature, the species that survive the most are the ones that intermix the most. When you have a lot of inbreeding, then you start to have defects in the program, or it starts to eat its own tail, so to speak. And the genetics that are strongest are actually the mixed. So when you take the strongest aspects of every portion, then it's stronger as a whole rather than just doing everything yourself and having it bad. And most people are recognize this, but it requires you to actually recognize your weaknesses. If you can do that, then you can start to relinquish the control and say, oh, this person is better. They're better at it than me, so they can do it. But that is the first step. The first step is to definitely recognize your strengths and recognize your weaknesses. And then once you've recognized your weaknesses, then you can more easily relinquish control to someone else who can do the job better than you. But it's tough, right? Because we have these big egos like, oh, I can do everything. I can do this better than anyone else. Sometimes it just takes perspective and to look at the different things and just see where, okay, and admit that you're not the best in the world.
Yeah, I think for a CEO, it also would be hiring issue if he's hiring people worse than him. Like the example I had in my mind is I was doing some human resources work for establishing a rota for like 20, 30 people. And for me, it was very easy. Like I can do it in 5 minutes. That would not require me to break my trail of thoughts. But I started to explain to my subordinate how I wanted it to look. And my trail of thought completely derailed. Like the train derailed from the train. And whoa, what just happened? And I just realized that he can do it in a week. But what cost me is actually that my train of thoughts got derailed. So do you have any advices for people that are in those positions, or maybe that the issue is not that someone hired people badly, because I believe that you should hire people that are better than you, so you don't have to do it. But sometimes you're just forced to work with people that are not there yet.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one too. And it's a
Mm.
good test of patience and acceptance. So one of the things that you do just for your own benefit is when you're working with a team where everybody's got different levels of expertise and different levels of understanding is to just break it down into the smallest aspects. And you'll laugh at me, but even from IT to the customer service, and a lot of people even laughed at this, right? But it got people talking, got people working. So again, literally, what do? You walk into the office, you turn on the lights, you sit in your chair, you turn on your computer. People laugh at this for the first week. They're like, oh, I don't want to look at this. They got this little sheet of paper next to them with all these different steps. But once you get them used to that, those three little sheets of paper there, you'll notice something. You'll notice that when you give them more complex sets of instructions, they'll remember more because they're used to looking at these different sets of instructions and they're used to processing little bits of information. So what happens is while they're used to looking at those silly signs, okay, go in, sit down, turn in your chair, turn on your computer. When you leave, turn off the lights. They might seem a little passive aggressive, but you're actually training your brain to take those little bits of information in there. So the more detailed you can be in your plans, no matter what department you're in, and you can write them out in those step-by-step instructions, then you'll see that you're more effective and more efficient in the long run. Everything is clear and everything is in small steps.
Because eventually it will become your second nature. So you need to invest time if you want to train your people properly. Could you tell us the biggest advice you can give to people that want to achieve their dreams?
The biggest advice, there's actually two things. Actually, no, there's three things. The first thing is to really understand your why. Why are you doing it? Really dig deep, really dig deep. Like, why are you starting this? What does it mean to you? What would it mean to you if you succeeded and accomplished it? What does it mean if you don't? When your why is high, your cost is low. When your why is low, your cost is high. This is why 98% of businesses fail because they go into it and they don't understand their why or they don't understand themselves and also your core values. Because a lot of the times when we think dreams, we think American dream, or that's the biggest example I can think of where I want $1 million, $2 million, $10 million. And then I don't really care how I get it. I just want it. And that just leads to burnout and chasing your tail. The second biggest thing is that you want to not be attached to the outcome. You want to be really focused on the journey and just enjoying the journey to get there. Because a lot of times, especially for dreamers, we don't always succeed. But the thing is that while we're pushing so hard for this result in our head, what does success look like? Because 100, you can do everything right and you can still fail. But the important thing to know is that as you're going there, you're on your journey and you're learning things, you're learning skills, you're getting experience, you're missing out on all this great stuff. It's like when you said going to the moon, I'm so focused on getting to the moon. I'm not paying attention to the relationships I'm building while we're building the rocket, not paying attention to the skills I'm learning. I'm learning how to design rockets. I'm learning how to do math. I'm learning the science. I'm able to work outside at night and see the stars. So we tend to lose sight of the journey when we're focused too much on the actual results. And when we get attached to the results, then we feel pressure and we sometimes wind up just missing the goal because we're not really paying attention to what we're doing to get there.
Mm. We interfere with the process too much.
Exactly. And the third biggest thing to achieving your goals and dreams is taking back your power. Because we all have things that need to be done, that have to be done in order for us to achieve those goals and dreams. And they're not all internal. Sometimes they're related to bureaucracy, or sometimes they're related to laws, or sometimes they're related to even taxes. And just to take those things and take back your power in the aspect that when there's something you have to do and you're feeling that resistance, turn that around and say, I'm choosing to do this and find that reason for it. You can actually do a quick example here on the podcast and you can maybe even feel it yourself. Why don't you pick something you have to do that you don't really do?
I don't have those things no more.
You don't have things?
Not really. Like when I have things I need to do, I know that I'm in a bad state of mind. and that it impacts the final result. So this is the time I know that I definitely need the rest and revalue myself and connect with the source, because the thing that she said initially about why and how deeply resonates with me, because I believe the how is not my responsibility. The why is. If the why is strong, the how will find you.
Well, when your why is high, your cost is low.
Well,
And because when your why is high, there's many different sayings that all point to the same thing that you were just saying as well. It's not even necessarily about the how it gets done. And that actually goes back to, it gets into the realm of manifestations and things. And it's really funny how the universe works, not in the way you expect, but it is interesting that when you have the dedication and determination to achieve a goal, as long as your for doing it is really strong and you're fully focused on that, you're devoting your energy to it, it will happen. It's interesting in the way that it happened.
makes sense. If you invest energy, you need to get that energy back. But if you think that's going to happen a certain way, it would already happen. So it's going to be something completely different. So they're like focusing so much on how is really not productive. And she said also about Johnny makes sense too, because when you look high achievers, the hustlers, they achieve their dreams. So what? They're like empty inside and they have nothing else. So it's like always a balance thing.
Oh no, for sure. And the biggest issue is reaching a goal. If you're always only reaching for a goal, you're only ever looking to go higher, you're never going to be satisfied because there's always something that's higher. There's always something that's more. So you're going to be in this thing. And again, it's really about why you want to be there. I have a very personal story about that, actually, that I was always chasing the almighty dollar. I was always going higher. And I got to a point where the pursuit of the goal at the end, it had no meaning to me. I was working and at the expense of what I was working for. I was working for my family, but I was never there for them. I was working for this big dream of doing this, and I succeeded. But in the process, I almost lost everything I was supposedly working for. So there's that as well. So when we're going after goals, we do have to remember that we need to stay grounded and we have to really understand why we're doing it and just make sure that in the pursuit of going after that, we don't lose the why we're doing it.
If you get too close to the sun, you're going to get burned. For me, this is a perfect manifestation how the world that built on duality works. Because if you go deep, if you're going to be very cold, eventually you're going to feel cold. Same thing is with people that are having cold or flu. When the temperature is big enough, they gonna be very hot. So using this knowledge to your advantage is very beneficial, because people want things. The fastest way is the longest way. Because if you're gonna choose the fastest way, you're probably gonna get lost or burn out in the process. This is very good conversation, Chris. Tell me, where can people find you?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is just at my www.procrastinationstation.ca. I'm also on LinkedIn, just Chris Abdey. And yeah, those are the ways to find me.
Cool. Thank you for joining, and thank you all for listening to Pure Bliss called Golden Llama Show.